who's up and coming in Western Pennsylvania, who are the top Whitfield and City League guys you need to know about for the next few seasons. We've got 12 names that you should be keeping in mind as Pitt moves forward in recruiting the local area. We'll be breaking them down on today's Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Tuesday here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Chris Peak with you, of course, from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and the YouTube channel right here. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's where we put all our exclusive Pitt video content, whether it's these morning Pitt videos that we release for you every day, a little bit of a Pitt talk show to get the day started, and our weekly live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett get together to talk a little Pitt sports. We also have recruit interviews and player interviews and post-practice interviews and highlights and all different things that we do right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You want to make sure you don't miss any of it, so like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And make it nice and easy. There's a subscribe button right down there. You just click it. There's a little blue box, a little blue rectangle. Just click that thing. You'll be subscribed. You'll never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, we like to hear from you as well, so comment on these videos. Let us know what you think, what you're interested in, what you want to see us talk about, or if you'd like to see some interview guests or whatever you got in mind. You can comment here as well. We'll continue the conversation through the week as we do these morning Pitt videos. I thought we'd talk a little recruiting today. Yesterday we talked about freshmen who are going to play this year or freshmen who might play this year. And I thought we'd get even younger in our conversation today and move on to recruits. Pitt's got, and specifically local recruits. That's kind of what I'm interested in today. You saw the headline. You heard me say it at the beginning of the show that we're interested in talking about the local prospects today. And it's for a few reasons. One, there's just always an interest in local recruits. I think that's just inevitable. Whether people particularly if people live around here, they're interested in local recruits. Who should they be keeping an eye on? If they have a chance to go out to a high school game, who should they watch for? But I think even Pitt fans who move away and maybe keep up with the program by, with our YouTube channel here at Panther-Lair.com, Pitt fans who move away still have interest in those local prospects, because we like it when people from here play for the team, right? It's always more fun when it's a local guy kind of, standing out and making big plays. It was a little extra fun when it was Doran Dickerson or Aaron Donald or, like a John Malecki or somebody like that. It's always a little bit more fun when that local guy is making plays for the hometown team. It's the Neil Walker effect, we like those guys who are from here. We like those players who are from here. And so that creates always sort of a natural interest in the local recruits, the kids in the Whitfield, the kids in the City League, particularly if they're of a certain level, if they're FBS or Power 5 level, and particularly could be Pitt targets. And, we could probably do a whole episode, and we probably have, and if we haven't done it on the Morning Pitt, we've certainly done it on plenty of live streams, and who knows, we might get there before training camp starts next week. No, we probably won't. But at some point, we'll probably do another episode on the Morning Pitt of why Pitt, does or doesn't succeed with local recruits, or why they're not getting as many local recruits as they did back in the day. And we could probably dig deep into that. The quick and short answer is that recruiting has become much more global. The world is much smaller in recruiting than it was 30 years ago. And when I say the world is much smaller, I mean that it's much easier to reach out and touch someone on the other side of the country than it used to be 30 years ago. It was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, you were mailing videotapes, maybe DVDs if you were really ahead of the curve, to college coaches so they could look at you. Now you can just email a huddle link and they can see all your highlights. They can pull it up themselves. They don't even need the link from you. They can find it themselves and look you up. The link, a lot of kids have them linked in their Twitter profiles. It's a lot easier to find. And so whereas I think maybe the recruiting successes Pitt had in the past with local recruits, a lot of it was tied to guys just kind of being around here and staying around here. Well, now going to Texas A&M is a real option for a Whippeal kid. Going to Florida is a real option for a Whippeal kid. It's not just Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia, and maybe Ohio State. All these things are real options. You could go to UCLA because they're going to find you, and maybe that's where you end up wanting to go. But regardless, like I say, we could spend a whole episode talking about Pitt's success or lack thereof in the Whippeal. This past year, they signed 2 kids from Western Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, they have 2 committed right now from Western Pennsylvania. We'll talk about them in a second. In the recruiting class, they signed 2 Western Pennsylvania one. Why do I keep saying 2? One Western Pennsylvania prospect, Cruz Brookins from Steel Valley, the safety prospect, who was really one of the last additions to the class, signed with Pitt, and he'll be one of, I think, 14 Western Pennsylvania scholarship players on the roster this season, at least as it's currently projected. Of course, kind of the funny aside there is there are 14 scholarship players projected to be on Pitt's roster this season, 14 kids from Western Pennsylvania, either the Whippeal or the City League. And 4 of those 14 came in via transfer. Phil Dracovic, Derek Davis, MJ Devonshire, and Donovan McMillan all came back to Pitt after leaving the area for, the SEC for 3 of those 4 guys, Notre Dame, and then Boston College for another one of those guys, and now they're back. And so this number of local prospects on the team in any given year is likely to shift because Western PA guys do leave the area, and some of them end up coming back. And these guys we're talking about, Dracovic and Derek Davis and MJ Devonshire and Donovan McMillan, they're not unique. They're not the first ones to do it, and I don't think they'll be the last ones either. I think you'll see other local kids come home over the next few years through the transfer portal. That's neither here nor there. They signed 1 last year. They have 2 committed this year. Cam Lindsay, the 4-star linebacker from Aliquippa, and Ty Uhas, the defensive end from Central Catholic, defensive end / defensive lineman. I think Ty could probably play either one, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up playing the interior. But what about looking ahead? And I'm particularly interested in looking ahead at Pitt's recruiting targets in Western Pennsylvania, because I've seen a bunch of these guys this summer. Big showcase a few weeks ago was a 2/10 top 150 camp and showcase out at Shadyside Academy. Had some of the top kids from the recruiting classes of 2024, 25, 26, and 27 in attendance. And yes, 2027 is guys who just finished 8th grade. They'll be in 9th grade next year. So going pretty deep there, going pretty young. And we only have a couple of guys that we'll mention. More will emerge. But it stands out to me that I think there are some pretty good prospects coming through Western Pennsylvania over the next few years. Particularly the class of 2026 looks really strong. And I think 25 is going to have some more guys emerge by the end of this fall. And 2027 is already off to a hot start with one of the top prospects in Pennsylvania, the state, not just this local region, already kind of emerging. But if you start with 2025, you start with the recruits in that class. One of the first guys that stands out is Brady O'Hara. He's a tight end at North Catholic. And I've seen him a couple times. Saw him at Pitt's prospect camp. Saw him again at that top 150 camp out at Shadyside Academy. Sort of feels like a guy who's going to come down to Pitt or Penn State. I think, is sort of how it feels. Wouldn't be surprised if it ends up somewhere else. He's a good prospect, a nice looking tight end he's big and he can run and potentially has the frame to grow into, even an offensive lineman down the road, a Brian O'Neill type of path, potentially for him, a couple years into college. Another guy that's really interesting, you talk about position versatility and how's he going to grow into his body, is Bradley Gompers. He's a linebacker at Central Catholic, which, as I go through this 2025, 2026, 2027 recruiting classes, I'm going to say that phrase, a linebacker at Central Catholic, a bunch of times, because Central's linebacking core this next year is loaded, and for the next few seasons, because Anthony Specca, of course, in the 2024 recruiting class committed to Penn State. He'll be a senior this year, but pretty much everybody else they're going to rely on in that, pretty much in their back seven, But especially at linebackers where it really stands out to me. I mean, they're all underclassmen. The oldest guy. There's one or two juniors like Gompers, and then there's these a bunch of sophomores, and then even some freshmen coming up. Central Catholic's linebackers. I mean, it's just one FBS guy after another, one Power 5 guy after another. And Gompers is particularly interesting because he's a really tall, skinny guy that, I mean, if you saw him walk off the bus, you would think he was probably either a wide receiver or maybe a skinny tight end. You probably wouldn't project him to play linebacker. You might think, if he's fast enough, he might be a safety. You wouldn't necessarily project him to play linebacker. He's because he's skinny and tall. I mean, he's about 6'4", 6'5", probably 6'4" or so. Taller than your average linebacker. But he's intriguing because he moves really well. He can run really well at his size, and he's a guy who could potentially be a number of different positions. He could grow into a safety. He could just bulk up and be a really tall linebacker. He could end up playing offense in college. Pitt offered him a scholarship. Pretty much every guy we're talking about here has an offer from Pitt. Actually, yeah, I think we're going to talk about 12 different recruits, and 11 of them have offers, as far as I know. So they're all top Pitt targets, and definitely guys to keep an eye on. Gompers, yeah, is really interesting just as a big, tall, but kind of lanky linebacker who could add the pounds and the muscle to probably play that position really well, but also have the athleticism to run and cover. Antoine Black is a defensive back, an athlete in the Rivals database. I think he's got the potential to play on either side of the ball. He's at Laurel Highlands, and another guy that Pitt has offered, a guy who, so many of these defensive backs, whether they're local or not, when Pitt offers them, I mean, I think you can pretty much imagine what they look like, right around that 5'11", 190 range. Some of them a little heavier, lighter, some a little bit taller, a little bit shorter, but all right around that range. Good, athletic, physical corners and safeties, and usually with the potential to play both. And I think that's what Antoine Black from Laurel Highlands looks like. Tyke Hayes, the running back from Aliquippa. Obviously, Pitt got Cameron Lindsay to commit in this year's recruiting class. Hayes is that next big target in Western Pennsylvania, or next big target at Aliquippa, and probably one of the contenders for the top two. I should say one of the contenders for the top spot in Western PA as far as who's the top overall prospect. Tyke Hayes is one of the top two possibilities. I think there's two candidates to be that number one guy in Western PA. Hayes is one of them. Super productive running back at Aliquippa. He's been a star since he was a freshman. Everybody's known about him since then. He's been on the rise, and he's going to be, the next 2 years is going to determine whether he, how he establishes himself as the top prospect in Western PA. And he's got all the offers you would expect a talented running back from Aliquippa to have. This is going to be a challenge for Pitt, for sure. But they're going to battle for him because he's the kind of guy you want to keep around. If you have that level of success, you're that good at Aliquippa, you want to get him to Pitt. The competition for that number one spot as the top recruit in Western PA's class of 2025 is Deshaun Burnett, a linebacker from Amani Christian who is really impressive. I mean, he told me, wait, let me look it up. I meant to look this up of how big he is. He told me he's 6'4", 225 pounds going into his junior year of high school. And he told me that I was standing right in front of him, holding I was using my phone to record the interview. And so it doesn't matter that I was using my phone or a recorder or whatever it was. What's relevant is I was standing, I can't say eye to eye with him because he was taller than me. I'm a solid 5'11", borderline 6 foot with shoes on, and he had a few inches on me. He was taller, so I don't think there's any question. He's 6'3", 6'4", and he's big. He is filled out, and I believe he's 225 to the point where this is your size now going into your junior year of high school. How big are you going to get? And are you going to stay at linebacker when you finally reach that sort of max size? There's a very real possibility he could end up putting his hand in the ground and rushing off the edge. But also if he can kind of maintain his weight right around that 225 to 240 range and keep the athleticism and speed that sort of sets him apart, because he plays a lot of different positions. He's at Imani Christian, so I mean they're going to be playing both sides of the ball a decent amount, and I think he's an offensive skill player on that side of the ball. He plays wide receiver for 7-on-7 even. And so if he can keep some of that athleticism, he can probably line up as an outside linebacker who can cover and run. And these next 2 years, watching those two guys, Tyke Hayes and Deshaun Burnett, battle it out for the number one spot in Western PA, I think is going to be really interesting. And who knows? I mean, a year from now, there might be somebody completely different. We might look at it and say, oh, obviously Antoine Black is the number one guy, or obviously Gompers, or whoever, an old lineman or something like that. But for my money right now, it's Hayes or Burnett, and I'm not sure. Burnett is really, really impressive physically. Hayes is a monster too, but Burnett is really impressive physically to see him up close. Looking forward to seeing him with pads on as a junior this season. Then you go to the next class, the 2026, and this group, I've got as many names here in the 26 class that I just went down in the 25 class, right? I talked about 5 guys in the class of 2025. I've got 5 guys right here in the class of 2026. And they're only going into their sophomore year. I think that group is only going to grow. 26 class looks like it's got a chance to be one of the better ones locally that we've seen in quite some time. And a big part of it, back 7 players on defense, linebackers and DBs. There are 3 standout DBs who already have multiple Power 5 offers, Pitt among them. And again, Pitt has offered almost every guy I'm going to talk about here, every guy in this 26 class I'm going to talk about. 3 DBs with Power 5 offers already, with Pitt in heavy pursuit. David Davis from Imani Christian, Keyshawn Robinson from Westinghouse, and Deron Barksdale from Steel Valley. And they're all really intriguing in their own way. They all have, I think, sort of ups and downs. Like Robinson's a little bit skinny. Davis needs to work on his flexibility and his hips. Barksdale, I don't know. I mean, smarter people than me will probably say you're an idiot. It's obviously this guy or it's that guy. I think Barksdale looks like the best out of the whole group. He's got the best combination of size and athleticism. Again, watching him at a camp a couple weeks ago, it's a non-padded camp, so they're not playing real football, but he's running downfield with some talented and fast wide receivers. He's making a play on the ball. He's reading the quarterback. He looks like a Pitt DB. I mean, as much as any of these guys, he looks like a Pitt DB, a guy who could play corner or safety, a guy who could be a physical defensive back, run with, get physical with receivers off the line of scrimmage, jam them up, and then turn and run with them and make a play on the ball. That's Deron Barksdale from Steel Valley. He's a guy that I like as much as anybody on this list. I mean, to be honest. David Davis is another one who really stands out, like I said, and Keyshawn Robinson from Westinghouse. I think as he grows, has a chance to grow into a really nice. He's a really good player already. I think he has a chance to keep growing because he's kind of small at this point, but not like. I mean, I say he's small, but I don't really mean that as an insult. It's just an observation of where he is right now, heading into 10th grade. I mean, he's a pretty young guy. And then the 2 linebackers in the 26 class who I think really stand out, Davion Taylor from Bishop Canavan and Colson Gatton, a linebacker from Central Catholic. Now, Gatton's father played at Penn State, so that's obviously going to make, you're not going to write it off immediately. He says that, yeah, it means a lot to him to have interest in an offer from Penn State, but it's not, he's really interested in everybody. He really likes Pitt. He likes Ryan Manilak. He likes Corey Sanders and all those guys. Obviously, that's going to be a real challenge. It's going to be a real battle to try and beat Penn State for him. When you have this many Power 5 guys in Western Pennsylvania, you're going to be going head-to-head with Penn State for a lot of them. And that's going to be the case with a bunch of these guys. But if you can get 1 or 2 of those DBs in the 26 class, if you can get one of these linebackers, Davion Taylor or Colson Gatton out of the 26 class, you're going to be really setting yourself up strong with local prospects. I mean, the same thing with the 25 class. They got 2 guys this year from 24, Uhas and Cameron Lindsay. 25 class with Antoine Black and Bradley Gompers and Brady O'Hara and Tyke Hayes and Deshaun Burnett. If you can get 2 of those 5, you're going to, first of all, you're going to get some really talented players because these guys are really good, and you're also going to go a long way in rebuilding sort of the local presence on the roster. Now, we know you don't need to have it, right? Kenny Pickett wasn't from around here. Jordan Addison wasn't from around here. Kalijah Cansey wasn't from around here. Aaron Donald obviously was, but that was a long time ago. Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill weren't from around here. Marquez Williams isn't from around here. MJ Devonshire is, but Bengali Kamara isn't. Servassier Dennis is. The list of guys who aren't from around here is far longer than the list of guys who are. And that's how you have to build your team. You have to pick what areas you're going to target and where you're going to recruit. Florida, Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. But when there are talented local prospects in any class, you want to get as many of them as you can. Like I say, if you could get 2 or 3 of these 5 guys I talked about in the 2025 class, if you could get 2 or 3 of the 5 guys I'm talking about in the 2026 class, you'll be in good shape. And you'll work forward on the 2027 class where they've got Larry Moon, who is already, he's going into 9th grade. Kid from Aliquippa. He's actually transferring to Central Catholic, which is a big win for Central. And again, builds up that loaded young defense that the Vikings are going to have this year. And he's big time. And he's got the Pitt, the Penn State, the West Virginia. Wouldn't be surprised to see him land around there unless he keeps growing, not just physically, but in terms of his ability on the field, and then becomes an Ohio State, Georgia level guy, which seems like a very realistic possibility. And then, we talk about Pitt having to face down with Penn State or showdown with West Virginia. You start getting Ohio State and Georgia involved. Now you're, in Notre Dame, you're fighting at an even higher level, not an unwinnable level, just an even higher level. He's going to be he's a guy who's got a chance to get there. He's already built like a high school junior. Going into his 9th grade year, and he's only going to get bigger and better. And the other guy to keep an eye on when you're watching the Central Catholic defense this season, and he might get a bit fewer reps than some of these other guys we talked about, Anthony Specca and Bradley Gompers and Colson Gadden. Ashton Blatt is another guy who doesn't quite have the offers yet, but he's going to be a major presence in that linebacking core. But another guy to keep an eye on is Roman Thompson. He's a linebacker. He's going into 9th grade. He just transferred in. I forget where he transferred from. I thought I had written this down. Let me see. I didn't, but it doesn't matter. They all end up as Vikings eventually. He's going to be another big-time one. And he might not play as much as some of the older guys because he's only going to be in 9th grade, but I think you'll see him on the field. And he's already really impressive looking. I mean, he's got a really nice frame. He's built well heading into his 9th grade year. I was really impressed with him when I saw him in person. So that's a couple names to keep an eye on in the 2027 class. And with all this stuff, 25, 26, 27, we're talking about these guys pretty far in advance. There are going to be more names who emerge, but when we can already go 5 deep on the 25 class, 5 deep on the 26 class of offered recruits and Power 5 offered guys, I think you're looking at a real chance for the next few years to be some of the strongest years we've seen in the WPIAL and the City League in quite some time. I think, those numbers are going to grow, and you're going to be looking at some really good Power 5 prospects coming out of this area over the next few years. So that's 12 guys to keep an eye on. 11 of them already have scholarship offers from Pitt and other Power 5 schools, and I imagine Roman Thompson will be on that list pretty soon as well. But it's a really strong list. It's an impressive list, and like I say, I think it's only going to keep growing. So keep an eye on those guys. We'll be reporting on them all season long for the next few years. These guys are going to be you're going to hear about them from us for sure. So keep an eye on Panther-Lair.com for all the latest on the local recruits and more. Right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Listen, before you go, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Subscribe button is right down there, so click that thing. You will never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It's been fun talking a little recruiting here. We'll be breaking down the defensive ends tomorrow. That's our position preview for the week, so tune in for that. Hope your week has been off to a great start yesterday, and hope your Tuesday goes well as well. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Like and subscribe, and we will catch up with you tomorrow on the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.